She grabs the wrist before she thinks. The skin is cold. Thin. It jerks under her grip. Come out. Silence. The church is empty except for the echo of her own breathing. She tightens her hold. I won't ask twice. A small voice answers from beneath the pew. No, the word is dry. Cracked. She crouches lower, her black dress brushing the dusty floor. You're bleeding. A pause. I'm fine. You're not fine. She pulls gently this time, and a boy slides out from the shadow. Dirt smears his knees. His lip is split. One eye swollen halfway shut. He keeps his head down. She studies him the way she once studied her husband's face in a coffin, searching for something already gone. You got a name? He nods but doesn't speak. Names are spoken, she says quietly. Thomas. Thomas what? He hesitates. His shoulders tense. Just Thomas. She understands that answer. You got a home, Thomas? Yes. Then why are you under my pew? He swallows. His fingers dig into the wood. I can't go back. The words land heavy between them. She hears the faint creak of the stained glass window shifting in the evening wind. The one with the governor's family name etched at the bottom. The boy's eyes flick toward it, then toward the door. Always the door. Who scares you? She asks. He shakes his head. Fear has a face, she says. What's his? Silence again. She reaches toward his collar and gently pulls the fabric aside. Purple bruises bloom along his collarbone. Old ones. New ones. Did someone tell you to hide here? No, did someone hurt you? He nods once. Small. Fast. Then he whispers, it's not that bad. She lets out a slow breath. That's what children say when it's very bad. The church feels tighter now. The air thinner. She stands and offers her hand. Stand up. He hesitates. If he finds me here, she waits. He'll burn this place down. Her jaw tightens. Who? The boy looks at the door again. My father. The word barely forms. She studies him in silence. Outside, a truck engine hums somewhere in the distance. Too close. Too slow. Is he looking for you? Yes. Did he hit you today? I breathed wrong. She closes her eyes briefly. When she opens them, something has settled there. Hard. Decided. Listen to me, she says. You are not leaving with anyone tonight. He shakes his head urgently. You don't know him. You don't know me. The handle on the front door rattles suddenly. Hard. The boy flinches so violently he stumbles backward into the pew. The door rattles again. A fist pounds against the wood. Open up, a man's voice calls. Calm. Controlled. I know he's there. The boy grips the hem of her dress. Please. She does not look back at him. Her eyes stay fixed on the door. Stay behind me. The knocking grows slower now. More patient. Miss Evelyn, the voice calls again. You don't want trouble. She walks toward the door, steady steps across old wooden boards. Her husband built this church with his own hands. She buried him behind it. She has nothing left to lose. The handle rattles once more. Open the door. She reaches the latch and rests her palm on the cool metal. Behind her, the boy whispers, he'll hurt you. She answers without turning around. Let him try. The door rattles again, slow and deliberate. Evelyn keeps her hand on the latch, waiting. Stay behind me, she whispers to Thomas. He'll hurt you, the boy says. Let him try, she repeats, calm as stone. The knocking turns into a push, then a shove. The door swings open, revealing a tall man in a sheriff's uniform, badge polished, boots shining. His smile is too steady. "Evening," he says. "Sheriff," she answers. Her voice is flat, measured. "My boy wandered off," he continues. "He says he doesn't want to go home." Evelyn tightens her grip on Thomas's shoulder. "He's dramatic," the sheriff says, stepping inside. "He's bruised," she says. The smile falters for a fraction of a second. "Discipline isn't a crime," he says, voice smooth, controlled. "Fear isn't discipline," she fires back, stepping closer. He tilts his head, eyes sharp. "You accusing me?" "I'm listening." He moves like he owns the space, boots clicking against the wooden floor. "You don't want to make this ugly. You don't want to make it holy," she answers, watching him. He leans close, the smell of leather and metal filling the small room. "You live alone." "Yes." "Things happen to lonely women." She doesn't flinch. Thomas curls into her side. "He stays here tonight," she says, voice steady. The sheriff looks at the boy. "You'll regret this." Thomas whispers, barely audible, "I already do." Evelyn locks the door behind him, the click loud in the empty room. Thomas finally cries, small at first, then louder, the sound bouncing off the wooden walls, filling the space with grief and relief. She kneels beside him, brushing hair from his face. "Shoo, it's all right. You're safe." "He'll come back," Thomas says, hiccuping. "Then we'll be ready," she says, looking toward the door, hearing the echo of his threats in her own chest. "Do you know why he does it?" she asks softly. Thomas shakes his head. "Because he can," she murmurs, bitter. The sheriff's shadow lingers in her mind, a weight she can't shake. The church feels smaller now, heavier. She lights the lantern, small flame flickering, throwing long, jagged shadows across the pews. "Why hide here?" she asks. Thomas shrugs. "He said no one would find me." She studies his bruises again, tracing the marks with careful eyes. "You're not alone now," she says. Silence stretches. Outside, the wind shakes the stained glass window. She watches Thomas's gaze flicker to it. The governor's name etched at the bottom stares back, a reminder of power that shields cruelty. "Do you want to tell me everything?" she asks. "I can't." "Then I'll wait," she says. Her hands rest on his shoulders, firm, grounding. The lantern trembles, light dancing over the rows of empty pews. "He'll come back," Thomas whispers again. "Yes. But we're not going anywhere." Her eyes flick to the door, listening for footsteps that may never come. Outside, the night settles over the churchyard, quiet but tense, like the air itself is holding its breath. "Do you trust me?" she asks. He hesitates. "I don't know." "That's honest," she says. And it is. For a long moment, they sit together in the flickering light. No one speaks. Every creak of the wooden floor sounds louder. Every rustle of the trees against the windows is a warning. And then, faintly, somewhere in the distance, a truck engine hums. Too close. Too slow. They both hear it. Evelyn's jaw tightens. Thomas presses closer. "We'll face it together," she says. The boy nods. She stands slowly, lantern in hand, looking toward the front door. She can't see him yet, but she feels him there, waiting, and knows that the sheriff is only the first of many obstacles. The night stretches ahead, long and uncertain, but inside the small church, they are for the first time in hours, if not days, a small island of defiance. And defiance, she knows, can be more dangerous than fear. The lantern flickers, casting uneven light across the pews. Thomas sits on the floor, knees pulled to his chest, staring at the small pool of light. Evelyn kneels beside him, damp cloth in hand, gently wiping the blood from his split lip. "Does he hit you every day?" she asks, soft but direct. "Only when I breathe wrong," Thomas mutters, voice barely audible. She freezes for a moment, absorbing the weight of that. "He drink?" she asks. "Yes." "Does anyone know?" He swallows, small and fast. "Everyone." Her stomach twists. Everyone? They say he keeps order, Thomas whispers. She leans back slightly, looking around the quiet church. Ledger pages lie scattered from the pulpit, names of donors inked in neat, official script. The sheriff's name catches her eye. Written bold, like a claim stamped on the building. You trust me? She asks him. He shakes his head. I don't know, he admits. She nods once, steady. That's honest. She dips the cloth in warm water and continues cleaning his wounds. He makes me sit by the well, Thomas says suddenly, his voice low, uneven. Why? Says if I talk, I'll end up in it. The words hang in the room, heavier than any threat she's heard before. She looks toward the window, toward the darkened outline of the old well outside, thinking of the rumors and half-truths whispered in the town. You've seen what he does, she says. Yes. And you hid here, she observes. Yes. Good choice, she murmurs, brushing dirt from his hands. His eyes flick to the lantern, to her face. Do you think he'll come back tonight? Maybe, she says. Her voice is firm, unshaken, but her hand tightens on the cloth. Thomas hugs his knees tighter. Silence falls, heavy and pressing. Why me? He asks after a long pause. She looks at him, sees the small, worn features under the dirt and bruises, and the fear that doesn't leave. Because someone has to, she answers simply. The church floor creaks under the settling night. Shadows of the pews stretch lone, folding the space in uneven folds. What happens if he finds me? Thomas whispers. She meets his eyes. Then he'll meet me. Outside, a branch scrapes the window, sharp and sudden. Thomas flinches, hiding his face against her arm. She doesn't move. Do you ever cry? She asks quietly. I try not to. Try not to, she repeats. Because he punishes it? Yes. Her jaw tightens. We'll cry if we need to. Safe crying. Another scrape outside. The wind rattles the stained glass panes. The governor's name etched at the bottom seems to leer at them. Why him? Thomas asks. Why who? The sheriff. Because he thinks power is his to take, she says, watching the dark for movement. He nods slowly, as if trying to understand, as if trying to memorize courage. Will they believe me? He asks, voice small. Not everyone, she admits. Then what do I do? You survive. And I'll keep you alive tonight. That's all that matters right now. He leans against her side. His small frame trembles. She strokes his hair, steadying him. Outside, the night continues, endless and patient. But inside the small church, between the cracked wooden floorboards and flickering lantern light, there is a fragile sense of something almost like hope. They sit together, waiting, listening to the silence that stretches too long to be comfortable, but not long enough to be safe. Every creak, every shadow, every distant sound is a threat and a promise. And they hold each other tightly, knowing this is the first night they might survive. The envelope is shoved under the church door, flat and heavy, its wax seal glinting in the lantern light. Evelyn picks it up, fingers brushing the cold, embossed stamp. She examines it for a long moment before breaking the seal. The paper inside smells faintly of tobacco and ink. She unfolds it carefully, reading aloud, voice low but steady. Your interference in family matters risks destabilizing our county. Thomas crouches beside her, eyes wide, tracing her lips as she speaks. What's it say? He asks, voice small. Evelyn folds the letter slightly, letting the weight of the words sink into the room. It says they protect him, she murmurs, voice hard. Thomas frowns. Why? Because he keeps votes quiet. Because he carries their power in his fists. He shifts closer, knees pressed to his chest. I don't understand. She shakes her head. No one wants to. But you're safe here tonight. The lantern flickers as if responding to her words. She crushes the letter in her hands and drops it on the pew, the wax seal cracking audibly. Did you ever see your mother? She asks softly. Thomas stiffens. She's gone. Gone how? She stopped breathing. The words are blunt, final. Evelyn swallows hard. She glances at the window, the pale light from the lantern spilling over the wooden floor, over the hymnal pages, over the ledger with the sheriff's name still inked bold. Her jaw tightens. No more graves, she whispers, almost to herself. Thomas watches her, expression unreadable. No more, he asks. No more, she confirms, brushing a strand of hair from his forehead. Outside, the wind shakes the stained glass panes again, faint echoes in the dark. She walks to the side door and locks it, the click echoing in the empty church. Do you feel it? Thomas asks, voice low. Feel what? The silence, it's heavy. Evelyn nods. It is. She kneels beside him again. But that heaviness can be ours. We can carry it. Thomas hugs his knees tighter. Will they come? Maybe, she says. Her voice is steady, flat, but her hand tightens around his small one. But we're ready. The boy swallows and nods slowly. I don't want to be taken, he says. You won't be, she promises. Not tonight. She lets her hand drift over his shoulder, pressing lightly. Thomas leans into her warmth. The shadows stretch long across the floorboards, jagged shapes that move with the flicker of the lantern. The letter lies crumpled on the pew, a quiet thread ignored. Evelyn looks toward the stained glass window again, the governor's name etched there, a reminder that power is patient and often cruel. They think I'm afraid, she says softly. Thomas shakes his head. You don't seem afraid. She smiles briefly. I am. But I can't show it. Not now. The boy tilts his head, small features scrunched. Do you hate him? I hate what he does, she says, keeping her tone even. I hate that he thinks he owns people. Outside, a faint engine hum vibrates through the night air. Too close. Too deliberate. Evelyn doesn't flinch. They'll know we're not afraid, she murmurs. Will they leave us alone? Some will. Some won't. Thomas leans against her side, trusting her words because he has no one else. She strokes his hair slowly, grounding them both in the fragile safety of this night. The shadows of the pews stretch like fingers, the old wood creaking under its own weight. They sit together, lantern between them, quiet but not silent. Words have been spoken, promises made. Threats exist, yes, but for the first time in a long while, Evelyn feels control not over the town, not over the sheriff, but over this moment, over Thomas, over survival. The letter remains on the pew, ignored but alive. Outside, the night continues, patient and dark. Inside, the church holds two defiant figures, waiting for what will come, and ready for it.by morning. The sound of boots on gravel reaches the church before the men appear. 3 deputies stand at the fence, hands resting on holsters, eyes sharp and calculating. Evelyn steps out onto the wooden steps, Thomas huddled behind her. Hand him over, one of the deputies says, voice flat. Show me a warrant, Evelyn replies. The man smirks. You know we don't need one. She straightens, eyes narrowing. You do in my house. Thomas grips her skirt tightly. Please, he whispers. I won't let them take you, she says firmly. A deputy mutters under his breath, she's grieving. Let her pretend she's brave. Evelyn steps closer, chin raised. You touch him, you answer to me. The tallest deputy laughs softly. Who are you? I bury your mothers, she says, voice hard. Silence falls. The men exchange glances. The fence seems to shrink around them. Step away, the deputy says, taking a half step forward. No, her voice cuts across the yard, sharp as a whip. Step closer and you'll regret it. Thomas watches, wide-eyed, his small body pressed against her side. Sheriff says you're confused, a townsman calls from behind the fence. Evelyn doesn't flinch. I'm not confused. I'm angry. The sheriff himself appears at the edge of the yard, boots crunching on gravel, shadow falling over the deputies. You're making a scene, he says. You made a bruise, she fires back, gesturing at Thomas. The sheriff steps closer, face unreadable. You can't win this, he says. Then what? She asks, voice steady. I need him safe. The boy tugs at her sleeve, whispering, they'll hurt us. She bends to his height. Not if I have anything to say about it. A tense pause. The deputies shift, uncertain. The sheriff's jaw tightens. For now, he says finally, voice low, almost a warning. His smile is slow, calculated, like a blade sliding against the wood. The men at the fence hesitate, unsure if obedience or fear should win. Evelyn looks over them, taking in their hesitant hands, the twitch of holsters, the sweat on brows. You need to choose, she says quietly, but loud enough for them to hear. One deputy steps back. Another relaxes his fingers from the gun. The third swallows and nods. The sheriff's eyes flick to them. He wants control, authority, obedience, but here, in this moment, the line has shifted. Thomas watches the exchange silently, small fists clenched, trust placed fully in Evelyn. You touch him, she repeats, voice cutting through the murmurs of the crowd, and I'll scream loud enough for everyone in the county to hear. The sheriff tilts his head. You think they'll believe a widow and a child? Evelyn's gaze does not waver. They'll believe bones. The crowd murmurs, the quiet hum of approval spreading among those who have long known fear but are too careful to speak. A neighbor whispers to another, she's right. We've all seen it. The sheriff swallows, his control slipping. His boots scrape the gravel, slow and deliberate. This isn't over, he says, voice low but sharp. Evelyn steps back onto the church steps, Thomas behind her, lantern swaying slightly in her hand. She doesn't answer. Silence falls, heavy and tense. The fence seems less like a boundary now and more like a question, who holds power here? The deputies look to the sheriff, unsure of what to do, their patience fraying. The town watches, waiting, learning, feeling the first stirrings of courage. Outside, the wind picks up, rattling the stained glass windows of the church. It shakes the frame, the bell rope, the air itself. The sheriff takes a long, deliberate breath. His smile returns, slow, measured, but there's a tightness at the corner of his mouth, a shadow of doubt. Evelyn looks down at Thomas. He's trembling, but less than before. She grips his shoulder. We're not afraid, she says quietly. The deputies hesitate at the fence, the sheriff's gaze sharp but uncertain. The church stands tall. The boy's small hand slips into hers. For the first time, outside power and threat, they both feel a pulse of defiance, quiet but undeniable. And the sheriff knows, beneath the polished badge and boots, that control is no longer absolute. Night falls heavy over the church, thick and suffocating. Thomas wakes screaming, a sound that rips through the silence. Evelyn is instantly beside him, hands on his trembling shoulders. Shoo, it's all right, she says, voice low but firm. I'm here. I'm not leaving. He presses his face into her arm. He pushed her, he cries. Evelyn freezes. Who? Mom, he whispers, voice breaking, small and raw. She sits on the floor beside him, holding him tightly. You saw? Yes, he murmurs. No one helped. Her hand brushes his hair back, careful, grounding him. I know, she says softly. I know. His small frame shudders. There's bones, he whispers, barely audible. She stiffens, hearing the weight in his words. How many? She asks gently. More than one. The church feels smaller suddenly, tighter, heavier. Lantern light flickers against the walls, throwing elongated shadows across the pews. You didn't imagine it, she says quietly. It's real. And we'll face it together. Thomas curls into her side. Will he come? Maybe, she says, keeping her tone even. But we're ready. The boy's eyes are wide, reflecting the flickering light, haunted by memory and fear. Outside, the wind rattles the stained glass windows, carrying the whisper of trees brushing against old wood. Why didn't anyone stop him? Thomas asks, voice small. Because everyone is afraid, she says simply. Everyone. He presses closer, seeking warmth, seeking safety. I thought hiding would help, he says. It does, she replies. It keeps you alive. That's what matters. The rope of the well outside creaks faintly, almost a voice in the night. Thomas flinches, ears straining. Evelyn puts a hand over his small one. It's just the night. Nothing else moves unless we let it. The boy shivers. I can't forget, he says. You don't have to, she tells him. Not tonight. Not here. Silence stretches, thick, filled with the unspoken horrors of the town. Every creak of the floor, every sigh of wind, feels louder, deliberate. Will they bury her? He asks softly. Evelyn tightens her hold. We'll see justice in time. Tonight, we survive. He nods, still trembling, small hands clinging to her dress. Lantern light dances across his face, revealing dirt, bruises, fear, but also the first flicker of trust. Do you believe me? He asks. I do, she says simply. Then maybe I'm not lying. No, she murmurs. You're telling the truth. The well rope sways again outside, echoing like a slow, measured heartbeat. Thomas whispers, voice barely audible, I don't want to go back there. She strokes his hair, letting her hand rest against the side of his face. You won't, she promises. Not now. Not ever without me. Outside, the night stretches endless, patient, almost sentient. Inside, two figures huddle near the lantern, the weight of trauma pressing into them both. The church is quiet, save for their breathing, the creak of boards, the whisper of wind. Evelyn glances at the shadows, at the window, at the dark shapes of the pews, and feels the gravity of the night, the watchful, waiting presence of the town outside. Tomorrow, she says, voice firm but soft, we make a plan. We face it together. Thomas nods, pressing closer. I trust you, he whispers. Then rest, she replies, holding him as tightly as she can. The darkness feels less suffocating with her there. The well waits outside, silent for the moment, but the echoes of bones, memory, and fear linger. Inside, the lantern flickers, the shadows dance, and two defiant souls find a fragile calm amidst the horrors of their waking nightmare. Morning is thin and pale over the churchyard. Evelyn stands at the edge of the old well, dirt under her nails from last night's work, lantern still swinging loosely in her hand. The sheriff arrives, boots crunching on gravel, face dark and unreadable. You're trespassing, he says, voice low, controlled. Evelyn doesn't flinch. On truth, she asks quietly, hands firm at her sides. Step away, he says again, moving closer. No, she replies, voice steady, eyes locked on his. Thomas huddles behind her, small and tense. What if he grabs us, he whispers. Then I'll fight him, she says simply. The sheriff's eyes narrow. You're making a mistake, he says. Evelyn tilts her head. Or you are. I've seen mistakes hide in power for too long. The deputies linger at the fence, uncertain, glancing at the gathering townsfolk. A few faces peek from behind barns and fences, eyes wide, mouths pressed tight. They've watched this family, this boy, the church, and the shadows for years. Now, they wait. Evelyn steps closer to the well, fingering the rope that dangles from the pulley above. Search it, she says, voice loud enough to carry. Search what? The sheriff snaps. Everything, she says. You're accusing me of murder? I'm accusing you of fear, she replies. Thomas grips her skirt, whispering, he's angry. Evelyn leans down, brushing hair from his forehead. Good. Let him be. Anger shows the truth. The sheriff lunges forward. Evelyn steps between him and Thomas. You touch him, she says, voice low but unyielding. I won't ask twice. The deputies shift uneasily. You think they'll believe a widow and a child, the sheriff hisses. She meets his gaze evenly. They'll believe bones. The wind picks up, rattling the stained glass windows. The rope sways gently, casting shadows that dance across the church walls. A murmur spreads among the town, a quiet ripple of approval and recognition. She's right, one man says under his breath. Another nods. The sheriff grits his teeth. This changes nothing, he spits, stepping back. Evelyn shakes her head slowly. Everything changes when silence ends. Thomas whispers, voice barely audible, will they see? Yes, she says. Some will. Some won't. The well bucket swings slightly as deputies cautiously approach. Evelyn stays between Thomas and them, her hands firm on his shoulders. You touch him, she repeats, voice sharp, and you answer for every fear you ever caused. The sheriff glances at his deputies, unsure. They exchange subtle signals, uncertain if they obey or protect. This isn't over, he mutters, but his voice has lost its edge. Evelyn looks at him steadily, unwavering. It is, she says. For now. Thomas's small hand finds hers, gripping tightly. She squeezes back. We've done the right thing, she whispers. The townsfolk shift closer, emboldened by courage they didn't know they had. The sheriff notices the silent judgment in their eyes, the quiet defiance of people who have been taught obedience too long. He swallows, lips pressed tight, and turns away slowly, his boots crunching across the gravel. Evelyn watches him leave, then looks down at Thomas. Are you all right? She asks. Yes, he whispers. I think so. She brushes dirt from his knees, straightens his shirt, and nods. Then we continue. One step at a time. Outside, the wind rattles the church windows, carrying the faint sound of leaves scraping against the old wood. Inside, the pews are silent witnesses. The rope of the well hangs still, the ground around it marked by defiance and courage. Evelyn feels the weight of the morning, heavy but alive. Thomas glances up at her. We're safe? For now, she says. But we're ready for what comes next. The sheriff is gone, but the memory of him lingers. Outside, townsfolk linger at the fence, watching the widow and the child. Inside, the church feels less like a sanctuary and more like a shield. Evelyn pulls Thomas close. No one touches you, she says. He nods, small hand slipping into hers, holding on. And for the first time in days, the world outside feels like it can wait. The bucket sways slowly over the edge of the well, ropes creaking under its weight. Evelyn grips Thomas's hand tightly, the lantern light trembling against the walls of the church as if afraid to reveal what is coming. Ready? She asks, voice low, steady. He nods, small fingers clutching hers. Outside, deputies hesitate, unsure how far to go. Evelyn steps forward, placing herself between them and the well, silent warning in every measured movement. The first pull is slow, deliberate. Metal clinks against stone. Thomas flinches. It's okay, she whispers. The bucket rises, heavy. Something dark shifts inside. She sees the edge of a shoe, small, caked with dirt. Gasps escape the crowd behind the fence. Evelyn keeps her voice calm. Keep pulling. Another heave. Fabric appears, torn, frayed. The lantern flickers wildly, shadows dancing across the old wooden pews. Evelyn's jaw tightens. What is it? Thomas whispers. She swallows hard, lifting the lantern higher. Something, someone. Another pull, slow and heavy, brings more. A small hand, a ring glinting in the dim light, rises from the depths. Evelyn crouches closer, heart pounding. Her name, she asks gently. Thomas whispers, trembling, Mary. The deputies stiffen. The sheriff steps closer, but his face hardens, eyes narrowing with a mix of anger and unease. This proves nothing, he says, voice tight. Evelyn lifts the ring slowly, letting the light fall on it. It proves she existed, she says, voice steady, almost ceremonial. A murmur spreads through the crowd. Faces pressed to the fence, neighbors realizing what they have known but could never speak. The sheriff's fists clench, but the lines of authority begin to blur. Thomas crouches beside her, eyes wide, voice shaking. She's real? Yes, Evelyn whispers. The bucket swings slightly as the rope settles. More fabric, small pieces of clothing, the evidence undeniable. The sheriff's lips press into a thin line. "You've gone too far," he says quietly, almost to himself. Evelyn's eyes never leave the bucket. "No. You went too far." The townsfolk shift, some closer, some leaning over the fence, whispering. "Bones," one mutters. "We always knew." Thomas's small hand curls into hers. "Are they gone?" he asks. "Yes," Evelyn replies, her voice soft but unwavering. "We'll see them honored now." The sheriff steps back, jaw tight, shoulders stiff. He looks to the deputies. Their hesitation is clear. Authority cracks. A faint wind rattles the stained glass windows. Evelyn studies the sheriff for a long moment, feeling the weight of defiance and truth pressing against the walls of the church. "Will he come after us?" Thomas whispers, voice low. "Some will try," she says. "But we're ready." Outside, the town stirs quietly, whispers passing through neighbors like a wave. The sheriff straightens, forcing his calm, but the tension in his eyes betrays him. Evelyn lowers the bucket to the ground, careful, reverent. The remains lie there, small and broken, proof of what had been hidden, ignored, dismissed. Thomas leans into her side, small frame trembling, but no longer hiding. "What do we do now?" he asks. "Remember them," she says softly. "And make sure no one else disappears." The crowd outside murmurs approval, uncertain, hesitant, but stirred. The sheriff's hand rests on his holster, but he does not move. Evelyn looks at Thomas, brushing dirt from his knees, straightening his small shoulders. "We've done the right thing," she whispers. For her. For us. The wind rattles the church windows again. The lantern light flickers over wooden pews, over the rope, over the small pile of evidence that will change the course of this town. The sheriff swallows, lips pressed tight, and steps back. Evelyn bends slightly, holding Thomas's hand. "No one touches you," she says quietly. He nods, small hand gripping hers. Outside, the well waits silently. Inside, justice begins to take root. Evelyn presses her hand against the wooden hymn boards, feeling for the gap she knows is there. A small creak, a loose plank, and the letters slip out, yellowed, brittle, edges frayed. She spreads them across the pew, lantern flickering over ink that hasn't been touched in decades. Thomas crouches beside her, eyes wide. "What are those?" he whispers. "Voices," she says softly. "Voices that were ignored." She picks up the first letter. The handwriting is small, hurried. "He hurt my son. No one helped. The well. I fear it too." Evelyn reads aloud, voice steady, letting the words carry through the church. Thomas shivers. "Why didn't you leave?" he asks, looking at her, confused. She kneels, brushing dirt from the letters. "We had nowhere," she says quietly, glancing at him. He presses a hand to his mouth. "They all said nothing?" "Yes," she murmurs. The next letter tells of threats, bruises, and quiet warnings from women who had nowhere to speak, no one to trust. "I begged the sheriff to act." He laughed. Evelyn lets the words hang between them. Outside, the wind rattles the windows. The shadows of the pews stretch long and thin across the floor. Thomas's small hand rests against hers. "Why?" he asks. "Why did they let this happen?" "Fear," she says simply. "Fear of him. Fear of power." He swallows hard. "Will they help now?" Evelyn studies the letters. "They promised to investigate." "They never did." "Some will," she says. "Some won't. But we have a start." A soft footstep echoes behind them. A townswoman appears from the doorway, hesitant. "I saw her, too," she whispers. "I tried, but I was too scared." Evelyn nods. "It's not too late." Thomas glances at the woman, then at the letters scattered across the pews. "Are they lying?" he asks, small and doubtful. Evelyn looks at him steadily. "No," she says. "They are telling the truth." The wind rattles again, sharper this time, pressing against the church as if it wants the words to be heard. Then why doesn't anyone stop him? Thomas asks. Evelyn glances at the shadows on the walls. Because fear is stronger than justice for most people, she replies softly. Thomas hugs his knees closer. Will we? We will, she says. We have to. Her hand drifts over his small shoulder, grounding him. Another letter slips from the pile. Evelyn picks it up carefully. He pushed her into the well. I tried to speak. They didn't listen. He laughs still. Her jaw tightens. She places it on top of the others. We will listen, she says quietly. Thomas watches her, small face tense, eyes bright. We won't let it happen again? Not while I live, she says, voice unwavering. Outside, a branch scratches against the window. Thomas flinches. She grips his small hand. This church, she says, is ours tonight. We protect what is here. The lantern flickers, casting long, jagged shadows over the letters, over the pews, over the floorboards worn by decades of silence. Thomas presses closer, leaning into her warmth. I'm scared, he whispers. I know, she says. I'm scared too. But fear doesn't win here. Not tonight. Not ever if we keep speaking. The wind rattles again, carrying the quiet knowledge of long-hidden horrors. Inside the church, between the hymn boards, the letters, and the flickering lantern, a fragile defiance begins to take root. Evelyn looks down at Thomas, brushing dirt from his knees and shaking hair from his forehead. We'll start with truth, she says softly. And then we'll make sure no one can hide in silence ever again. Smoke curls under the church door before the flames appear. Evelyn smells it first, acrid, sharp, carrying the promise of destruction. She grabs Thomas's hand and pulls him close. Stay behind me, she says, voice low but hard. He clings tightly, small fingers digging into hers. Outside, the sheriff and deputies stand frozen, boots rooted in gravel, uncertainty on every face. Step back, Evelyn warns. Or this ends badly. One deputy moves forward. The sheriff shakes his head, voice clipped. Leave it. The flames lick at the edge of the door, blackening wood. The wind pushes smoke into the small church, tangling with the lantern light, casting flickering shadows over the pews and the letters spread across them. Thomas coughs softly. Evelyn presses a damp cloth to his face. Breathe through this, she whispers. The sheriff's jaw tightens. She's mad, he mutters. She's protecting him, Evelyn fires back, voice carrying over the crackle of fire. And you'll answer for this. The deputies hesitate, glancing at the flames. Their hands inch toward holsters, then retreat. One swears under his breath. You shouldn't be here, the sheriff says, voice low but harsh. I told you before, she says evenly, I've nothing left to lose. Touch him, and you'll see why. The door warps, smoke pouring through the cracks. Thomas presses closer. It's burning, he whispers. I see it, she says. Her hand drifts over his small shoulder. It doesn't touch us. The flames lick higher, devouring the wood around the latch, blackening letters that weren't protected by the pews. She steps forward, lantern in hand, lifting it so the light steadies shadows over Thomas's small face. We fight together, she says. The sheriff swallows, lips pressed tight. You're risking everything, he says. Everything is gone already, she replies. I'm not risking anything. The wind shifts, feeding the fire. Smoke coils into their lungs. Thomas coughs harder. She pulls him into her arms, holding him tight. We're leaving nothing behind for fear to live in, she whispers. A deputy reaches for the door, but the sheriff slaps his arm away. Let it burn, he says reluctantly. She's won this night. Evelyn grips Thomas's hand again, letting him lean against her side. See, she murmurs. Fear loses when courage stays. The fire consumes the lower panels of the door, glass blackening, edges curling inward. Lantern light dances in tandem with flame, shadows, and light tangling across the walls, over the letters, over the pews. Thomas presses against her, small and trembling. I'm scared, he whispers. I know, she replies softly. But fear doesn't rule us. Not tonight. The sheriff steps back, face tight, authority cracked. The deputies follow reluctantly, glancing at the flames, the widow, the child, and the quiet defiance that radiates from them. Outside, neighbors peek over fences, some hidden, some braver than before. Smoke swirls, carrying the sharp scent of charred wood in long-hidden truths. Evelyn lets Thomas press into her side as the fire licks higher, blackening, consuming. She doesn't flinch. It's symbolic, she murmurs. Burn the door, burn the silence. Nothing else can hide now. The sheriff turns, voice low. You've made your point. Evelyn meets his gaze, eyes unwavering. Yes. And it's only the beginning. Thomas swallows, small chest rising and falling. Will it hurt anyone? Not us, she says. Just fear. The wind blows, rattling the stained glass windows, shaking the old rope, flickering lantern light against charred wood. Flames dance, smoke thick, the church filling with the smell of iron and ash. Inside, between shadows and lantern, between child and widow, something shifts. Defiance burns brighter than fear ever could. The sheriff watches, powerless for the first time, as truth and courage claim the night. Evelyn holds Thomas tight. We're safe, she whispers. And we'll stay safe. The graveyard is quiet, too quiet. Evelyn steps carefully between cracked headstones, Thomas close behind, clutching her hand. The ground is uneven, patches of dirt loose under boots. Do you hear that? Thomas whispers, voice low, small and tense. She shakes her head. Nothing, she says softly, though every instinct is alert. Shadows stretch long, cast by the pale morning sun, jagged across moss-covered stones. We shouldn't be here, he murmurs. We have to, she replies. To remember. To see it done right. A small breeze rattles the iron gate behind them. Thomas flinches. I don't like the quiet, he says. Quiet hides things, she murmurs, but it also gives space to speak truth. They stop before a shallow mound of earth, recent, untouched by flowers or ceremony. Evelyn kneels, brushing dirt from the wooden cross marking the grave. The name is faded but legible, Mary. She sets the lantern beside her, its light shaking slightly. Do you see her? She asks. Thomas nods, small face pale. She was scared too, he says. Evelyn swallows hard. Yes. And now she won't be forgotten. He traces the edge of the cross with his finger. Will they ever leave her alone? No, she says quietly. Not if we remember her. The wind shifts again, carrying the faint smell of iron and earth. Thomas presses closer, voice small. What if they come? Then we're ready, Evelyn says, calm and firm. We've faced worse already. She glances up at the surrounding trees. Shadows move subtly, but nothing approaches. The deputies and sheriff are elsewhere, lingering at the edges of town, unsure how to act after the fire, the well, the letters. The town watches in cautious silence. Thomas kneels beside the grave, pressing his small hands into the dirt. I can't leave her, he whispers. Evelyn takes his hand. You don't have to. You just have to promise to fight with me. To make sure no one else disappears. He nods. I promise. She brushes dirt from his knees. Good. That's enough. A crow caws somewhere in the distance. The sound echoes, sharp, unsettling. She's watching, Thomas says. Evelyn doesn't answer immediately, letting the silence stretch. Yes, she finally says softly. And she approves. That's why we're here. Thomas leans into her side. Do we tell anyone? Some, she says. Some need to know. Some will never speak. The wind stirs again, rattling the old tombstones. Shadows flicker across their faces. The lantern trembles slightly, throwing jagged light over moss and letters. Evelyn kneels beside Thomas. We'll leave her flowers, she says, voice low. We'll mark her grave with care, and we'll make sure her story stays alive. Thomas presses his forehead against the wooden cross. I'm scared, he whispers. I know, she says. I am too. But fear doesn't rule us. Not now. Not ever. The graveyard stretches endlessly, quiet and waiting. Every stone, every patch of moss, every shadow seems to hold memory, loss, grief. Evelyn stands slowly, taking Thomas's hand, guiding him through the uneven earth. We're done here for now, she says. But we'll come back. And we'll bring truth with us. He nods, small hands gripping hers tightly. The wind rattles the lantern one last time before settling. The graveyard remains still, solemn, but inside it, courage and defiance have taken root. They walk back toward the church, side by side, carrying grief and hope together, knowing that silence has been broken, but the fight is only beginning. The attic stairs groan under Evelyn's boots as she climbs, Thomas trailing behind, small and tense. Dust hangs in the air, thick and dry, making the lantern light flicker against old beams. Why are we here? He whispers. There's more to know, she replies. More that was hidden. Cobwebs cling to the rafters, brushing their faces. Boxes of forgotten papers and trunks of yellowed cloth sit in corners, untouched for decades. Evelyn kneels, brushing aside a thin layer of dust, and opens a small chest. Inside, bundles of letters tied with ribbon, brittle and faint with age. Thomas leans closer, eyes wide. What are they? The truth, she says simply. She unties the first bundle carefully. Inked words, hurried, sometimes trembling, tell stories of fear, of hidden abuse, of people too afraid to speak. Evelyn reads aloud softly, I saw him push her. I tried to tell. No one listens. He laughs at the law. Thomas swallows hard, voice shaking. They knew. They all knew. Evelyn nods, folding the letter back. Some did. Some didn't. Fear silences more than hands ever could. She pulls out another bundle, letters from women, mothers, widows, scribbled with warnings and pleas. Do something. He owns the sheriff. He owns the votes. He owns fear. The words hang heavy between them. Thomas presses his small hands to his mouth. Why didn't anyone stop him? Evelyn lets the lantern sway, light catching shadows on the walls. Because power hides in plain sight. Because obedience is easier than justice. He looks at her, small eyes wide. Will we stop him? We will, she says firmly. Starting now. Another bundle, tied with frayed twine, reveals even older letters. Handwriting more precise, ink darker. Threats, bribes, silence bought with smiles. If you speak, we'll ruin your family. Your child will pay. Thomas shivers. Did they hurt anyone else? Yes, she says softly. Many. Too many. The wind rattles the attic window, a faint scrape of branches against glass. Evelyn sets the letters on the floor in neat piles, separating names, separating stories, separating truth from fear. Thomas kneels beside her, tracing lines of ink with small fingers. They couldn't protect themselves, he whispers. No, she replies. But now someone can. She gathers a few letters, pressing them to her chest. This is our weapon. Words. Truth. Memory. Proof. He leans closer. Do we show everyone? Not yet, she says. We prepare. We make sure they listen when the time comes. The lantern flickers violently, shadows leaping across rafters and boxes. Thomas flinches, hiding against her side. I'm scared, he admits softly. I know, she says, voice low. Fear is part of it. But we can't let it rule us anymore. Another bundle slips from the edge of a trunk, falling to the floor with a soft thump. Evelyn picks it up. He pushed her into the well. No one came. They all watched. She feels the words burn inside her, solid and heavy. We remember them, she says, voice steady. And we'll make sure no one else disappears in silence. Thomas presses his forehead against her arm. Will it be enough? It has to be, she whispers. The attic creaks again under its own weight, old and watchful. Lantern light casts long shadows, but inside them, defiance and courage sit beside grief. Evelyn folds the letters carefully, stacking them with intention. We're ready, she says softly. We've carried their voices far enough. Now, it's time they speak for themselves. Thomas nods, small hands gripping hers tightly. Outside, the wind rattles the eaves. Inside, between dust, shadows, and the brittle letters of decades, hope and truth take root in the attic's quiet, patient silence. The sheriff's boots crunch against the gravel outside the churchyard before he appears, hat low over his eyes, hands clenched at his sides. Evelyn stands at the threshold, Thomas behind her, small and tense. It's time, she says, voice low but unwavering. The sheriff stops, jaw tight. You've gone too far, he says, voice flat but sharp. I've gone far enough, she replies, stepping forward. You've gone far enough, he repeats, a tremor in his tone he can't hide. Evelyn's eyes don't waver. You made sure the boy suffered. You silenced women. You hid bones. You hid truth. That ends now. Thomas's small hands grip her skirt, eyes wide. The sheriff glances at him, expression faltering. Don't put him in the middle, he says, voice harder now. He's already in it, Evelyn fires back. And I won't let him suffer more. The deputies linger at the fence, boots uneven, unsure where loyalty lies. One coughs nervously. The sheriff's jaw tightens. You think a widow and a child can ruin me? I know they can, she says. Her voice is calm, steady, deliberate. You're finished hiding in fear. The town knows now. He takes a half step forward. The town? They fear me. Evelyn tilts her head. Fear is different from silence. Silence is done. Thomas presses against her side. Will he hurt us? He whispers. Not today, she says. Not with me here. The sheriff glances at the lantern on the steps, light flickering over her face. He sees the defiance, the calm in her stance, the certainty in her words. Something shifts. Anger curls, sharp and tight. You think this proves anything? He hisses. Evelyn steps closer. It proves that truth survives power. That fear can be challenged. That children don't have to disappear in silence. He swallows. You'll regret this. She smiles faintly, eyes hard. Regret is yours. You've let bones rot and voices die. I won't. Outside, a neighbor leans over the fence. Another steps closer. The crowd murmurs, quietly, a wave of acknowledgement, recognition, courage. The sheriff notices the hesitation in his deputies. Control slips. He grips his hat, twisting it in his hands. You've stirred them, he mutters. Yes, Evelyn replies. And it's about time. Thomas watches, small and tense. Do they understand? Some do, she says. Some will. The sheriff swallows, lips pressed tight. This isn't law, he says. No, Evelyn admits. It's justice. Something you forgot how to give. The wind rattles the stained glass windows. Lantern light flickers, shadows dancing across cracked pews, over the old well, over the letter she carries close. Thomas steps slightly forward. He'll come back? Some will, Evelyn says. But not today. Not while we stand together. She glances at the sheriff, unwavering. Your badge doesn't make you untouchable. Your power is built on fear. Fear isn't enough anymore. He swallows again, tight, slow. His authority, once absolute, is unraveling in the quiet defiance of one woman and a child. You've made them see, he says finally, voice low, grudging. Evelyn nods once, firm. We've made them see truth. That's the reckoning. The sheriff's hands loosen. Deputies shift uneasily. The wind carries distant voices,